rallying 10% in the past week despite a late day sell-off. Let's get to our Bob Pisani at the New York Stock Exchange for all the details. Hey, Bob.
Hello, Melissa. Oh, here's the good news. Melissa's right. Bitcoin's up about 10% in the last few days, though it did drop quickly midday. That's a little mysterious. It's not clear exactly what happened here in the middle of the day. Now, some note that electronic payments company Square has withdrawn its application to get into the banking business. That's according to American Banker. That was a big new deal back in June. New York financial regulators granted Square the go-ahead to allow New Yorkers to trade cryptocurrencies on its Cash App. So today's drop may be due to concern that there may be less future volume in cryptos. Now, there's not much good news for Bitcoin recently, folks. It broke through the psychologically important 6,000 level. You know that. Last week that happened. It's still in a long and even a short-term downtrend. In fact, the last time there really was a rally of any note was way back in April when Bitcoin went from about 7,000 to almost 10,000 in about 2 weeks. But hasn't done anything since then on the upside. Now, there have been some reports that volumes on some exchanges have increased in the last few days as Bitcoin has come back a bit. Now, that may be true, but a few days is a very short time horizon. And a lot of these foreign exchanges have, shall we say, questionable monitoring tools. I'm being kind when I say that. Watch the volumes at Coinbase. That's what I do. This is the largest US-based crypto exchange. Now, if you just take a look at the dollar volumes, look here, the last few months, they have been clearly on the decline. It's down about 80% from the February levels to the June levels, and it's down 4 months in a row. You can see that clearly. Here's what I want to see. Let's see if we can at least get July levels from dropping over the June levels. Just bottoming out at this point, Melissa, would be a victory. Back to you.
All right, Bob, thanks. Bob Pisani at the NYSE. Our next guest sent shockwaves across the crypto market when he made these comments on CNBC earlier today.
Bitcoin's historically traded at 2.5 times its mining cost, so it's not out of the question that it could be over 20,000 by the end of the year.
Now, Bitcoin would still have to rally over 200% to reach 20,000, but the $20,000 comment was interpreted by some as a sign of bearishness. Now, we may remember, even as Bitcoin has plunged, Tom Lee has stood by his 25,000 year-end price target for Bitcoin. Tom, though, is back to say reports of his bearishness have been greatly exaggerated. Tom, thanks for coming back. It did take me aback. I was there on Squawk with you this morning, and it did take me aback when you said over 20,000 instead of saying 25K. So do you stand by 25K?
Well, I do think it's the first time I've ever heard someone thinking something could triple is a bearish comment.
Yes.
Right. I may have misspoken a little bit. I think what I was trying to illustrate was that given where mining cost will be and applying the historical average of 2.5 times mining cost, that would imply fair value over 20,000, roughly 22,000. So I don't, we still think Bitcoin can reach 25,000 by the end of the year or something like that. But it's still a huge move from where it is now.
So you're not bearish, and I get how that's completely exaggerated, taken out of context, but it doesn't sound like you're as bullish. We've had Rob Slimer on from your shop as well, and at the charts, he would put Bitcoin up, he would come over, I would ask him, so, is 25K possible? And he said, it's going to be hard. But yeah, that's the forecast.
If you look at the history of Bitcoin, I think a couple reasons why 25,000 is still possible is one, Bob has pointed out, Bitcoin moved, from 7,000 to 10,000 in a couple weeks. But from a historical perspective, over any 6-month period, 35% of the time, it's more than tripled. So in other words, it's, in any typical period, Bitcoin could triple, 1 to 3 times. So I think it's not out of the question that Bitcoin can make a big move here. And I would just point out what makes it unusual today is that Bitcoin's trading below mining cost. And 6 months forward, now this is only, of course, roughly 10 years of history, Bitcoin's had a positive return in nearly 100% of instances whenever it's traded below mining cost. So I think the risk-reward is still very asymmetrically positive for Bitcoin.
This rally's got to start soon, though. You say 6 months out. We're 6 months into the year, so we have 6 months left.
Yes. The challenge is, of course, Bitcoin's quite volatile, and it's only got a 10-year history, but it is, in the entire history, it's always been a good time to buy it below mining cost.
So I don't understand why mining cost is necessarily a floor. We've seen in other things, the cost of mining gold, for example, things trade below that. why is it necessarily something like replacement cost? Why is mining cost necessarily a floor?
Well, mining represents, so let's imagine Bitcoin's a commodity, so mining represents the flow, right? Because it's the block reward. And so in any commodity where you're looking at flow, incremental cost does actually explain or govern the price. So, for instance, the all-in sustaining cost of gold is actually a tachometer or a speedometer that really gold trades around. Gold stocks have historically traded pretty tightly in a band of price to book. So Bitcoin isn't a great buy when it trades one standard deviation above its 2.5 times, which is like over 3, like 3.5. And it's always actually a good buy when it's trading below 1 times. And it's unusual to trade below 1 times.
Okay, so you're still bullish, clearly.
Yes, I am jet lagged too. So
All right, but while you're here, we want to get your opinion on some other coins. We thought we'd play a little Would you rather
with Tom Lee?
Crypto style. So I'll give you 2 cryptocurrencies. Tom, you tell me which one looks like the better of the 2 for the rest of this year. First
and he's
pairing,
jet lagged too, Mel.
I know. So we'll be gentle.
Be nice to the man. Come on.
Bitcoin versus Ethereum. Would you rather?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Yes. And it's because, I think that the investment case for Bitcoin's a little easier because it's a store of value. It's got a long history. Ethereum has some competition. We still like it, but it has competition.
Bitcoin versus Litecoin.
We'll take Bitcoin again. Now, no offense to Charlie, our cousin, Charlie Lee, yeah. But I'd rather own Bitcoin over Litecoin.
Okay. And we're going to end this with Ripple versus Bitcoin Cash.
I'd pick Bitcoin Cash over Ripple because, I think in some ways Bitcoin Cash has some unique features relative to Bitcoin, so there's some merits to owning it.
I want to do a bonus round with you.
Oh,
okay.
Wow.
Bitcoin or U.S. equities here to the end of the year?
Between now and year end, we think the S&P can do mid to high single-digit gains, right? That would get to our roughly 3,000. And I think Bitcoin can easily do well beyond that between now and year end. So I'd rather own Bitcoin. But of course, it is riskier, so it's different than owning an equity.
Okay. Tom, thank you, despite your jet lag, for joining us. We appreciate it. Tom Lee, a fun strat.
Well, I tell you what, I tend to agree with Karen that I have trouble with this whole, essentially the cost of mining, because I don't really think it's a commodity. I don't think people really, I see that target moving around. I think Bitcoin to me is probably range bound, and I think we're waiting.